Now, India has hit back at the US and the EU, exposing their duplicity on Russian trade. India's Ministry of External Affairs, in a 6-point statement, has responded to the recent criticism for its purchase of Russian oil and tough talks from the EU and President Trump. In a social media post on Monday, Trump escalated his rhetoric of additional penalties on India for the country's purchase of Russian oil. However, the post did not specify by how much tariffs would be hiked. Trump, in a Truth Social post, noted, I'm quoting here, India is not only buying massive amounts of Russian oil, they are then, for much of the oil purchase, selling it on the open market for big profits. They don't care how many people in Ukraine are being killed in the Russian war machine. Because of this, I will be substantially raising the tariff paid by India to the United States. In response, India's MEA, in a statement, exposed the EU and the US to do more business with Russia. India's foreign ministry criticized what it called targeting by the United States and EU over its oil purchases from Russia. The ministry called these recent actions in commentary unjustified and promised to defend the country's interests. Foreign Ministry spokesperson Randhir Jaiswal stated, I'm quoting again, the targeting of India is unjustified and unreasonable. Like any major economy, India will take all necessary measures to safeguard its national interests and economic security. In a 6-point rebuttal statement, the MEA pointed to the EU and US trade, with Russia being bigger than India's. Of course, we're talking about the trade here. The statement here read, and I'm quoting again, India's imports are meant to ensure predictable and affordable energy costs to the Indian consumer. They are a necessity compelled by the global situation. However, it is revealing that the very nations criticizing India are themselves indulging in trade with Russia. And unlike our case, such trade is not even a vital national compulsion. Previously, Europe had repeatedly criticized India for its Russia purchases. However, India has diplomatically showed a mirror to the region for its trade ties with Moscow. The statement highlighted that European Union in 2024 had a bilateral trade of 67.5 billion euros in goods with Russia. In addition, it had trade in services estimated at 17.2 billion euros in 2023. It also highlighted how the US continues to import from Russia uranium hexafluoride for its nuclear industry, palladium for its EV industry, fertilizers as well as chemicals. Now, last week, Trump tried to force India's hands to halt its Russian oil and defense purchase. On Friday, the US president shocked India with a 25% tariff rate and also threatened additional penalties for its Russian ties. A day after Trump's remarks, Stephen Miller, Deputy Chief of Staff at the White House, said what he said was very clearly stating that it is not acceptable for India to continue financing this war by purchasing oil from Russia. On Saturday, then Prime Minister Narendra Modi said that India was on its way to becoming the world's third largest economy and must remain vigilant about its economic interests and the instability and uncertainty that the global economy is facing. Invoking Swadeshi movement reference, Prime Minister Modi urged Indians to buy domestically made products and promote indigenous goods. Despite Trump's tough talks almost on a daily basis for India's Russia ties, the country has given a measured and guarded response. Now, for more on this, our correspondent Susan Tehrani has sent us this report. Listen to this.
President Trump has threatened a substantial tariff hike on India, this time over its purchase of Russian oil. In a Truth Social post, he accused India of profiting from war in Ukraine, but New Delhi is pushing back. India's foreign ministry called the threats unjustified and unreasonable, pointing out that the U.S. itself traded over $3.5 billion with Russia last year despite sanctions. Officials say India began buying Russian oil only after Western countries diverted supplies to Europe, and that the trade helped stabilize global energy markets. Experts also note India's refineries operate independently and choose suppliers based on economics and not politics. Meanwhile, President Trump has also warned Russia of severe tariffs if there is no ceasefire with Ukraine by August 8th. U.S. envoy Steve Witkoff heads to Moscow this week. Susan Tehrani reporting from New York for WION World is One.